Welcome everyone to the PYRESWAP show for our brand new Wednesday time slot. You guys, we made it. We made it to the brand new Wednesday time slot. I want to thank you guys for being here today on the brand new Wednesday time slot. And shout out to everybody who's here on Twitter and Twitch and whatever have you. Again, your appreciation is extremely appreciated. And today we generally we picked this type of Wednesday, like this time slot, because it's the middle of the week and it's actually also kind of more closer to where the FOMC and stuff, they make their press conferences and they kind of announce the numbers more in this time slot. But additionally, it's also about restructuring time to make marketing work better. I think that by having less PYRESWAP shows in a week, we can make the content a little bit more focused, a little bit more better, as opposed to spreading out into 6 time slots. Hope that makes sense. Now today I want to point out something, because right now, earlier today, we were looking at the charts, and there was a bunch of Pyre Gas, or Pyre Phantom, Pyre BNB, and Pyre AVAX. Some of them were green, some of them were red, some of them were green, some of them were red. Like the latest transaction was causing some sort of difference, right? And you know, Pyre BNB earlier today, it looked like it was down 20%, right? It looked like it was down significantly. But then later on, it no longer looks like that. It no longer looks like that. Like it had some sort of problem, but now it no longer shows that type of decrease, right? Maybe that was noise in the system. Who knows what it was? Then we have Pyre Phantom, which looks like it's up on the hours, but it still shows that it's down 4% on 24 hours. Make sense? Pyre AVAX, which normally has way less noise than the other two, it too is down on 24 hours. But if you look at the chart, if you zoom out, nothing about it really makes it look down. Does that make sense to you guys? Hope that makes sense. The reason I bring this up is because part of understanding like finance and economics is learning how to filter out signal from noise. Like, what is the actual truth of the progress being made or the change happening, and learning how to filter out like what's not really remarkable or what's an outlier. So I have said before that when it comes to having a deflationary uptrend, we really are only in the business of green weeks. But, do you guys remember me saying this? But we're still going to see observed red days. Does that make sense? And the reason this should make sense is because during the hyperinflation, where we were literally like, I don't know, machine gunning out tokens to maybe like a few hundred people at best, we had green days in the middle of those red weeks. Do you guys understand? Deflation and inflation are stochastic processes, and to understand a stochastic process, you want to think about rolling the dice again and again and again, and then taking that sequence of numbers and then comparing it to another dice getting rolled again and again and again. And when we're in a deflationary uptrend, arguably speaking, our probability of having a green day is much higher than having a red day, and that is why we can kind of assume we're going to have green weeks. But that does not guarantee that every day will be green. Make sense? Because there's always going to be a chance that the sellers will outnumber the buyers. We just did an airdrop. Did we not just do an airdrop? Does anyone here not remember us doing an airdrop? Were you guys here for the airdrop? I think I announced the airdrop. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate it a lot. We just did an airdrop. We also tapered the summoning circle, right? We tapered the summoning circle's division. It still gives out the same amount of fees, but now they're spread out over time. Does that make sense? Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. So on top of the fact that we have on top of the fact that we did an airdrop, we made the we tapered the summoning circle, we did an airdrop, and thirdly, at least on the Pyre Phantom chart, a whole bunch of people were buying it at a speculation, Would you guys agree that a bunch of people bought Pyre Phantom out of speculation? Because if we go and we look at the Pyre Phantom chart, by the way, you might look at it and think, oh no, has the trend actually changed? Well, believe it or not, like we're not even really in the business of looking at this day to day. Does that make sense? If you look at this, this line and you look at like this type of trend, does that make sense? All right. If you look at this type of trend and assume it was continuing, this is really where it would trend. Do you guys understand? Does that make sense to you guys? I think over there on the left, I made it look like it's uptrending more. But do you guys understand how I'm drawing this line? Yeah. And if we did overswing that trend line, we're going to experience an underswing of that trend line as well, right? Do you guys understand the whole concept that an overswing will beget an underswing? Is anybody like mind blown by this concept? Okay, yeah, like it's again, it's going to behave like a spring would. Does that make sense? It's going to behave like that, like a rope, as it were. Make sense? Yeah. Now, I want to be clear with you guys. There was a concern in the development department that if we are tapering the summoning circle divvy, then it's possible we don't have the same rate of deflationary uptrend. Does that make sense? It's possible that because we've reduced our deflation, we might not be in a deflationary uptrend, right? Do you guys understand? Like, oh, what if our ratio is backwards now? Do you guys know? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? I'm assuming you do. Anyways, we don't, yeah, okay, well, when we talk about deflation and inflation, we're talking about deflation meaning we're buying and burning, and inflation meaning minting and selling. Does that make sense? So we're talking about the combined factor of this happening over time, right? So it's more like rate, okay, we'll describe it like this. Inflation rate is equal to selling times minting all divided over time. Does that make sense? Deflation rate is equal to buying times burning also divided over time. Does that make sense? So when we changed the summoning circle divvy, we were in fact changing the buying over time aspect. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? You understand that variable kind of feeds into these two variables. Making sense? And because of this, we don't actually know, yeah, by the way, we don't actually know these numbers. Yeah, like we're literally extrapolating them into two factors. All we know is based on the price chart, whether one of them is greater than the other over time. Does that make sense? Like if we're in an uptrend, we can assume we got our deflation rate larger than our inflation rate. Make sense, everybody? Do you guys get it? Like if the chart's trending up, we must assume our deflation rate higher than our inflation rate. This is the same way it worked before Genesis too. The same way it worked before Genesis. Do you guys remember before Genesis, when somebody did a huge meterage, we would go from an uptrend right into a downtrend. Do you guys remember this? The charts were very, very rigid back then, but we could still see it happening, right? It wasn't until after meterage stopped that you effectively corrected all that, consolidated that, and then broke back up into an uptrend, right? We did this for months. We demonstrated this for months. Does that make sense? The theoretics haven't changed just because we're in Genesis. The reason we did the most aggressive Genesis contract in the history of Web3 is because we knew our tokenomics could handle it. Making sense? Okay. So when we look at these numbers, like we're just extrapolating them and we only care about the ratio between them, right? Is deflation rate or inflation rate higher? If inflation rate is higher, we would be in a downtrend. But if deflation rate is higher, we're in an uptrend. Right now on Pyre Phantom, the thing that I was showing you, it's actually not easy to see because again, it got over speculated. If we look at Pyre AVAX is showing the exact shape. Does that make sense? Pyre AVAX. Thankfully, we have 3 tokens here, so we can really check our work. But all I'm getting at here is because the only thing we're talking about here is a ratio, which, by the way, we have the finance textbook out. We're going to talk about ratios in a second. Ratios make numbers meaningful. Like, this is an axiom of finance. Does that make sense? For instance, in this book, it literally talks about Coca-Cola's net profit for 2016 was $7.3 billion. Did you guys know that? Coca-Cola's net profit in 2016 was $7.3 billion. Is that a lot of money, though? Is it? It's hard to tell without context. Does that make sense? It might seem like a lot of money, but the ratio to somebody who's analyzing that would just be like, how much money do I have in my bank account? If I don't have $7.3 billion in my bank account, I must think that's a lot of money. But it's not, right? Like, in the grand scheme of things, does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Like, I guarantee you, like, the United States military spends that much on duct tape every year, right? Do you guys understand? Ratios make numbers meaningful. So when we're talking about a deflationary uptrend or downtrend, we only know the ratio by analyzing trend. Make sense? So the fact of the matter is, we have changed our deflation rate, and it might mean that we have kicked ourselves out of a deflationary uptrend. But I want you guys to know, we won't know that. We won't know that until we see a red week. Does that make sense to you guys? We don't know that until we see a red week. Do you guys understand? Do you guys remember on September 6th? Nobody was bullish on September 6th, right? It wasn't until September 10th or September 11th, September 12th that people started speculating. Does that make sense? Right? There's no reason to conclude that we are not in a deflationary uptrend based on PYRESWAP behavior. I know that a lot of people suddenly became fucking salty again. They weren't salty 7 days ago, right? Yeah, why? Yeah, people begin theorizing about problems and shortcomings, blah, 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 blah. Why weren't you making this theorizing last week? Because Pyre Phantom looks like it's in a downtrend? Pyre Phantom is not in a downtrend. Pyre Phantom was over-speculated by people who were acting like degens. The reason they're acting like degens is because they're forgetting this is a paradigm shift project, so they bring the old paradigm with them. Does that make sense? And then it's like, oh, but now the price doesn't look like it's going up. It still looks like it's going up. You might just be an idiot. Are we clear? And I mean that with the utmost respect. By the way, I should apologize to Alessio, okay? So during the Reddit training meeting yesterday, I literally argued incessantly with Alessio about something that was probably superficial and irrelevant. But it was just beneath me to conduct myself that way. And if you guys want, we can actually pick. Well, thank you, Alessio, for your deep well of forgiveness. We can in fact pick the Twitter bio for the Twitter account because we didn't do that during Roundtable. So yeah, Trigger, are you here today? Are you here, Trigger? Ratios are the language of business, and finance people look to create them, talk about them, flip them upside down, break them apart, and so on. You guys might be reading about me. Ratios make numbers meaningful by providing comparability across companies and through time. Okay, so Alessio actually had a suggestion for the new Twitter, and he I think somebody screenshotted it. Let me see. And I think I saw the screenshot. Let's see what we have here. We have some great pictures. And let me see what I got here. Yeah, Yellen Tuesday. Yeah. Somebody else made the joke that if we didn't have an Italian user base, we wouldn't need to yell so much. I think that's, I don't know, slightly a pejorative opinion, but yeah, somebody was making that joke that like we wouldn't have to yell so much, but that's what you have to do when you have to talk to Italians, something like that. Yeah. Buongiorno, everyone. Buongiorno. But anyways, what we're getting at here. Do you guys now like understand enough of the deflationary uptrend? If you don't think PYREAVAX and PYREBNB are in a deflationary downtrend, then PYREPhantom isn't either. Do you guys understand? Does that make sense? Like, do you know why PYREAVAX is not crashing right now? Because it didn't have 3 days of going up 50 and 60%. Do you guys remember when PYREPhantom was going up 60% a day? 40% a day? Do you guys remember this? Who here remembers this? It was happening just a few days ago. Yeah. Do you guys know why? Guess what? It's a bullish indicator. It means that we arguably have some of the ingredients. We have some of the ingredients at the table needed to actually create that chain reaction of price explosion. Does that make sense? We just need more of that. Does that make sense? We were able to cause that that fucking brrr, right? Does that make sense? Like suddenly it was mooning for a second. But the deflationary rate wasn't, we're not really putting it on the moon right now. Does that make sense? We want there to be an ambling uptrend for the sake of comforting new users as they research the project. They'll see this nice little trending uptrend. Does that make sense? And it makes them feel warm and fuzzy about continuing to read the documents and continuing to watch the YouTube. Make sense, everybody? I know lots of people who they buy the token first and then they research it. Make sense? Yeah. Like I've heard this before. Like you can't risk not being exposed during your research time. It's fucking crazy. Anyways. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say about fucking deflationary uptrend. But again, it's all within our grasp. Does that make sense? Yeah, like we are in fact using the price chart as our fucking three-ring circus, for lack of a better way to describe it. Does that make sense? We are just using it to draw a crowd. Do you guys know why? If you zoom in like this, let me show you PYREAVAX's chart. Mr. Producer, could you screen share me? Do you guys see PYREAVAX's chart here? Who here can see my chart? Can you guys see it? Is it visible? Visible? Can you guys see my chart? Fantastic. Thank you so much for the feedback. Do you guys understand that this hill slide of red candles now begins to look more bullish the longer you're in an uptrend? Because if there's one thing that's accurate about TA, it's that price charts have memory and they visit their own history. Bitcoin certainly does, right? Would you guys agree? Bitcoin definitely shows a strong preference for support and resistance lines. I think people see this. Would you guys agree? Would you guys agree? So in a Web3 user base, while we continue to proceed through time, all of these red candles that everybody just suffered through and diamond-handed their bags through, they now look more and more droolingly bullish. Because wait a minute, if it's gonna keep going up, it's not even going into the beyond. It's actually it's still in the range where it's all understood. Does that make sense? Right? What do you think is more likely to happen? Visiting old prices or getting to an all-time high? What do you guys think is more likely to happen generally on price charts? The visitation of old highs or the new ones? Which one happens more frequently? You think all-time high is more frequent than visitation? Or you think that one's less frequent? No, okay. I don't know if Doc is answering my question correctly or incorrectly. Maybe reverse. Yeah, less. Yeah. All-time high is an extremely rare event happening. Does that make sense? Do you guys get what I'm saying? Right? But a chart that continues to be alive, it definitely has a much better chance of revisiting old prices. Does that make sense, everybody? So all of those red candles are now more and more of a bullish indicator because it's like, wait a minute. If it hit this price before and it's climbing up to this one, does that make sense? People will draw their own mirror shape in their mind. Make sense, everybody? Yeah, a retest, as it were. Retests. Indeed. Okay. Okay, so Alessio wrote for a Twitter bio. He wrote for our Twitter bio, he wrote this. He said, an elaborate GameFi project with its own complete economy, powered by our own DEX and multiple utility tokens. Live on AVAX, BSC, and FAN. Okay. Anybody else have alternatives? Yeah. Trigger Happy, are you here with us? Thank you, Mr. Good Project. Thank you to everybody on Twitch and or Kick and or other channels. Okay, maybe he's not here. I feel like he was here before, but it is what it is. Okay, you are here. Phenomenal. Anyways, yeah. So Trigger, would you agree that you spend a lot of time on Twitter? More than average for the average person? Would you say that happens to be perhaps you could call it your purview? Something like this? Yeah. I think that Alessio is also going to be modified, but we can build from what Alessio wrote. Does that make sense? So Trigger, I would actually ask you, like going back to what Alessio wrote, like what would you taking that idea and how would you modify it to make it more Twitterable? Yeah. Talking to you like a subject matter expert here, because I know you've probably seen what, at least 5 or 10 Twitter bios before. Yeah, maybe 15. A true Twitter veteran. He's probably seen at least 15 Twitter bios. Cynical, I couldn't agree more. I do agree that like turning it into like keeping things in like a digestible package is the goal, because this is also why for sure, Alessio, which is why we are editing it. This is also why we don't necessarily dump things like Vibratile liquidity or fucking decentralized credit union or like terminal utility. I don't know if you guys noticed this. We don't even use the word terminal utility in the short form of PYRESWAP's documentation. Does that make sense? It's like, while everybody who's known this project for a long time, like anybody who's been with us since 2022, they know that word, terminal utility. But we don't use it anywhere in the short version of the docs because it doesn't really help people's grasp of it. Does that make sense? Terminal utility is something happening in the background, and it doesn't really make people feel anything about like their bag or what's in it for them. Does that make sense? Even though it does do wonders for their bags, it's not the same. That mental connection is a bit of a jump. Okay. So why so cynical says something between Fi's high-level language and Alessio's is perfect. And I'm going to consult Trigger live on this show and say like, what would you think? Yeah, for a Twitter bio. Because we're going to make this a group project, you guys. We're going to do a group project on the PYRESWAP show. Yeah. If you want some of the buzzwords, okay. So let me actually pull Alesio's up again, and I'm gonna use this whiteboard. And I'm gonna write Alesio's up here. And elaborate. Okay, let me think. And elaborate. It is definitely elaborate. Do we want to use elaborate in fucking buzzwording? Let's see. Elaborate. On Twitter, you could literally say this. Yeah. GameFi decks for Gigabrains. Right? And then you can just spam emojis. Right? I'm being marginally facetious, okay? I'm not saying this is what we're going to put. But yeah, with its own complete economy. Yeah. Here's a word that people like. Here's a word that people like about this. Mega DAP. Right? So I'm going to put a little star here. Mega DAP. We're going to use Mega DAP in our fucking Twitter bio. Make sense? GameFi. We're going to do it. GameFi. Okay? We could also say red candles can't. Well, actually, you know what? That's more for the decks. Definitely talking about the chains. Yeah, we will mention the chains. Avalanche, BSC, Phantom, right? By the way, the chains and the fucking tokens, the gas tokens, they have different names. Make sense? Like AVAX is in fact a token, whereas the chain is called the Avalanche C chain. Are you guys aware of that? Yeah. Let's see. Complete economy. That's, I mean, it's cool. You guys, it's cool. Yeah. Yeah. How about this? Multi-token economy. Okay. There you go. A GameFi Megadap with its own multi-token economy on Avalanche, BSC, and Phantom. Does that work? Yes. Yeah. Do we not have the website, or is it the Discord? Yeah. Yeah. What link do we use? The website or the Discord? Yeah. Real yield. Do we have enough space for the real yield tag word too? You're not wrong. Okay. A GameFi Megadap with real yield. GameFi with real yield. There you go. Do you guys see it? You're not wrong. Why so cynical? Like, you're not wrong. Like GameFi does imply that, but also like I think that like blockchain and children, like I kind of doesn't fit. Do you know what I mean? Like I think some people think like, oh, it's okay, like they need to learn this too in their own way, but like I still don't think that like they should be learning this. Fuck man, I don't know. Yeah, anyways, yeah. A GameFi Megadap with real yield and its own multi-token economy on Avalanche, BSC, and Phantom. Does that make sense? Does that work? Yeah, let's see. Okay, I'll be honest. We're like calling it a decentralized credit union in phase 1 is just way too much to heap into somebody's mouth. Make sense? Like I can talk about it being a decentralized credit union all day long, but like as far as putting that on the Twitter bio, it might just be like too much. Yeah, because we don't actually even talk about the decentralized credit union in the docs other than mentioning it as a feature. Also, by the way, PYRESWAP is not the decentralized credit union. The greater PYRESWAP ecosystem is the decentralized credit union. Does that make sense? You have to include the tomb forks in that. Does that make sense? So it's not PYRESWAP. It's the GPSE is the, which includes the user base. Well, you know, Cynical, I do understand what you're saying here. Yeah, Cynical, I want you to know something. Like, there is a time and a place to use phrasing to address people's pain points. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean when I say pain points? Do you guys know what I mean? We use pain point targeting language in the Reddit strategy, by the way. Yeah, I agree. It's like just too much to dump into somebody's head, right? But if you say megadap, GameFi with real yield, multi-token economy, these are all things that people can kind of understand at least. If you say megadap, it still just implies that it's a large dApp, right? Do you guys get it? Like if you say megadap, it's not like, oh, I have no idea what that means, right? Not in Web3 at least, right? They are going to understand megadap because they understand what dApp is and they understand what mega is, right? We could call it a gigadap. Do you guys want to call it a gigadap instead? Megadap or gigadap? Right now. Everybody decide. UberDAP. I don't know. You know, there's already a ride-sharing app called Uber, and maybe it's not the... Yeah. Gigadap or megadap? What do you guys like? HyperDAP. Well, hyper means warm in theory. Yeah. Chat app. Okay, well, Alessio, I appreciate everybody's now taking their turn to... Okay. All right. Okay, Odin says mega. Okay, we're going to keep with mega. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Megadap. Okay. PYRESWAP, a megadap, a GameFi megadap with real yields. Here. I'm going to write it out. With the highest real yields. And its own multi-token economy on Avalanche, Phantom, and the BSC. Triggered. Literally this. If you want to, you could write at the very end, produced by Zero Centerage, right? Right? But arguably, I'll tell you this. Well, I'll tell you this, electronic. GameFi is the buzzword. So I'm gonna use GameFi because GameFied and gamified really mean the same thing. Because most people don't even understand what a game is. So like when they think GameFi, they think that like, oh hey, can we rip off Flappy Bird and then make people gamble on it? Does that make sense? And that's not even really GameFi. That's just like, okay, you're not just gambling on a fucking game. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like to understand GameFi, you gotta understand game theory, in my opinion. But not everybody's at that level. But anyways, I'm gonna say GameFi because it's part of our fucking branding. Does that make sense? And like people who are into GameFi, they're gonna like it for the aesthetic, including Pyre Producer. Does that make sense? Like they like the aesthetic. Make sense? Yeah. Technically speaking, GameFi is not like bearish. Does that make sense? A lot of meme coins are trying to like lure people in with this GameFi future of theirs. Make sense? Pterodactyl. Thank you so much for that amazing pun. Maybe one day we can launch a fucking dApp called Pterodactyl. But yeah. Until then, Trigger. Hey, Trigger, you still with me? I think actually we're gonna take this production fucking tag off because there's not like very much content on our fucking our 0x Senurage Twitter account. Makes sense? Like it's not. I don't think that like helps. And 0x5 joint. You know, I don't know if you guys think that's a good idea. What do you guys think? Like, should we fucking include, like, tag me? Yeah. Is it just like this? All right, everybody check. Everybody check. Let me go look at here. Audited by Ponzi Labs. Thanks. Okay, gone. Oh, you removed it already. Okay, so you already have it like this? Do you have exactly these words? You guys are having too much fun today. I guess it's okay. Okay, a GameFi mega dApp with the highest real yield and its own multi-token economy on Avalanche, Phantom, and BSC. Okay, that's let's see. Is the fact that okay, multi-token should have its should have a hyphen as well, by the way. And real yield should have a space in between it. No, I agree. Okay. Everybody good? Do we need to put hash? Oh, who gives a fuck? Okay. There we go. Twitter bio. Handled. Is the Twitter bio handled? Okay, fantastic. I trust you. I trust you. Okay. And Trigger, you being a Twitter expert, would you say that this bio is perhaps superior to what it was before? Indeed? Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, anyways, who has a question? Who has a question? Anybody? Okay, so additionally, ratios make numbers meaningful. I want you guys to know something. So in our Reddit strategy, by the way, we do training on that Tuesdays and Fridays. Somebody wrote this idea, right? Somebody wrote this idea, and they said that like 70% of people, they said this in the Reddit thread in our marketing campaign. They said 70% of people only care about gains. Right? And I want you guys to know something. I already have theoretics about this built for DeFi, and it's a ratio. Do you guys know the name of the ratio? They were referring to this as a utility token. The question on Reddit was about utility tokens, with like tokens with use case. Does that make sense? Do you guys know the ratio? Anybody? I might not be asking it clearly enough. Okay. There is a ratio in DeFi that is arguably not the golden ratio, but I am a fan of that type of fractal math. But they said 70% of people only care about gains, maybe 30% care about use case. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Pyre Gas utility has gains. Did you guys know that? Like, you can just make gains the use case. Were you guys aware of this? Were you guys aware? Yes? I don't think people realize this. You can just make gains the use case, right? The fact of the matter is, though, you can make the gains, yes, on red weeks too. Yeah. 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 But anyways, so the actual ratio here is called the utilizer to speculator ratio. Does that make sense to you guys? Maybe it doesn't. We're going to go look it up. We're going to go actually look up utilizer to speculator ratio. Now, most importantly, like utilizer to speculator ratio, you can look at a couple different things. You can look up the amount of actors involving utilizer to speculator, or you can look up the total amount of dollars, the total amount of dollar value. So if we go here to coin market cap and we go look at, we're going to go look at Ethereum today. And if I can get a screen share, Mr. Producer. Okay. So if you guys can see on my screen, we've got Ethereum here at the price of $2,582.91. We have a market cap of roughly 310 billion. We have a 24-hour volume of 14.6 billion. Does that make sense? $14.6 billion. Would you guys agree? Does anybody disagree with this number? 14.6 billion, 24 hours volume, here shown on CoinMarketCap. Does everybody see it? We're not going to round to 14.7. It's fine. 14.6 billion. Does everybody understand? If we go and we go to a website called EtherScan, you can actually see other things. You can look at the gas tracker. Now, by the way, you can look at this. You can look at the do you guys see here total 24-hour gas fees? Let it. I guess we have to let it. Refresh here. Or I guess maybe it's not even showing. Okay, we'll look at the 7 days and we'll fucking extrapolate from that. Okay, so do you guys see the 7-day gas fee here? It might be hidden behind my screen, but I'll write the number out. It's 7-day gas, yeah. $9,454 Ethereum. Okay, you guys see that? Right, and apparently, like, we're not going to get a 24-hour fucking gas thing here. Right? Do you guys see this number? So, 9,454 Ethereum. If we're gonna multiply this by the fucking price of Ethereum, and we can look at the 7-day average, or we're gonna do it regularly. We'll do 9,454 times 2,000. What was it? 2,581. Does that make sense? So for 7 days, we have $24.4 million in gas was spent in the last 7 days. Does that make sense, everybody? Does everybody follow me? Does this not make sense to anybody? Has anybody lost me? Fantastic, Odin. Thank you so much. This is a 7-day gas period, so we're going to divide it by 7 to approximate a fucking daily. So if we divide this by 7, we now have 3.5. We've got roughly 3. Okay, it's 3.48 million. We're going to round it. We're going to round this to 3.5 million. How about that? Does that make sense? Approximately 3.5 million. You guys follow me here? So, if we look at the daily usage of Ethereum gas, by the way, what is the utility of Ethereum? Can anybody connect this dot if I happen to glaze over it? What's the utility? What's the use case? Does anybody know? You probably do. It's gas. Does that make sense? That's the whole point. That's why we're tracking gas. The utility is gas. So, if we were going to do a ratio of utilizer to speculator ratio, and we were actually going to use utilizer dollar to speculator dollar ratio within a 24-hour period, you would have 3.5 million against, what's this number? 14.6 billion. This is the UTSR dollar sign. Make sense? Utilizer to speculator ratio in dollars. You can also measure utilizer to speculator ratio in wallets. Does that make sense? Like, you can look that up if you want, but it gets fucking crazy. For Ethereum at least, it's easier to look at it in dollars. Make sense, everybody? This is a very, very macro DeFi ratio. Does that make sense? It's very macro. Okay? 3.5 million out of 14.6 billion. Are you guys ready? Do you guys know how to divide numbers? We're gonna take a look. 3. Well, actually, we'll do it like long form. 3, 5, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 3.5 million divided by 1, 4, 6, 0, 0. That's 1,000. 0, 0, 0. That's million. 0, 0, 0. That's billion. Equals. Holy shit. Okay. Literally, I'm just gonna inverse this. That's fucking crazy. Okay. 4,100. 1 over 4,171. Do you guys see this? I realize I'm not using the big marker. Hang on. I'm going to hook you guys up, right? I'm never going to... I'm going to draw it differently. Can you guys see this ratio here? Mr. Pyre Producer, if you'll actually zoom back in on me. Okay, can you guys see this green ratio here? It's the number 1, then a colon symbol, then 4,171. Is this visible? Okay, so utilizer to speculator ratio. What this literally means, and if you guys don't understand this, it is the underlying utility which affords for the speculators. Does that make sense? Because what are people speculating on when they trade Ethereum in the first place? They're speculating on it actually achieving its use case. Am I making sense? When you trade futures for oil, if you trade oil futures, what are you trading futures of oil on about? Like, why would people trade oil at all? Why do people trade crude oil? Why is there a market for crude oil? A futures market for crude oil? because of its utility, its use case. Make sense? Its application, if you will. Making sense, everybody? Does this make sense? So, this is an example, by the way, of a ratio in Web3 that, like, if you want to understand the valuation of things, you have to be aware of things called the utilizer to speculator ratio. Make sense? The utilizer to speculator ratio, by the way, is still meaningless unless you start looking at it, compare it to across other blockchains. Were you guys aware of this? Were you guys aware? Let's do Avalanche next. Let's go right on back to CoinMarketCap. And we're going to go down here and we're going to look at AVAX. So Ethereum has a 1 to 4,100, right? What was like 4,200? Make sense? UTSR $. Ethereum is 1 to 41.71. That's, by the way, this is just today. Tomorrow, this ratio will change. When we look at AVAX, and I guess I'm going to draw that in red. AVAX's 24-hour volume was 422 million. Yep, 423 million. Looks right to me. Make sense? Okay. Now we're gonna go look at Snowtrace. Hopefully the Avalanche block scanners are gonna work today. Let's look at the old gas tracker. Look at that. Fees the last 7 days. You can actually see this. It's like, you'll notice, by the way, that these block scanners, this is where they don't get unique. This is actually where they start kind of diverging from each other. But you can see C-Chain here. It literally just shows you. It just shows you what the fees were the last 7 days. Do you guys see that? Do you guys see that on the screen? Seven-day gas. $166,241. You guys see what I'm saying? 7-day gas is $166,241. What's the next thing we're doing in the math, guys? What's the next step? Pop quiz. What is the next thing we do to figure out Avalanche's utilizer to speculator ratio in dollars? Are you guys paying, like, did I lose anybody? I think this is probably, like, historically, this is some of the first fundamental analysis that you're seeing in Web3. We're doing it today. Yeah, I've done this internally in the circus a few times. I think this is the first time I've broken down this analysis publicly. It's on a Wednesday. Isn't that great? What's the next step? I know you guys can hear me. What's the next thing we do mathematically? It's easy. We divide 7-day gas into 7. Make sense, everybody? 166,241 divided by 7. We assume that this 7-day gas, so we actually look at like 24-hour gas. We can assume that this is about $23,000. 750. Make sense? So, if we're now going to learn the utilizer to speculator ratio on Avalanche, what are we going to do? I know somebody knows this. Can you guys hear me? Fantastic. To learn the utilizer to speculator ratio on Avalanche. Yeah. What's the final math we have to do? Yeah. Well, we actually don't know user count here. We don't know user count. Yeah. We're gonna just look at dollars. Yeah, we're gonna look at just dollars, right? You can, like, there's two versions of this ratio, and the other one would be like utilizer to speculator ratio in wallets or utilizer to speculator in users. But here we're gonna just do dollars because we had for Ethereum. Does that make sense, everybody? Make sense? Okay. But the answer is we're gonna take the gas. Yeah, 24-hour volume. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna take $23,000, right? 23,750, and we're gonna divide this by $423 million. Make sense, everybody? I'm gonna erase this down here. I'm gonna erase this right here. Here, I'll rewrite this one in black too, so it's clear that this is not just for Ethereum. Utilizer to speculator ratio in dollars. $23,000. Let's see. Back on my calculator. 23,750 divided by 423,000,000 equals 5.6 of that. Never mind that. We're looking at 1 to 17,810. Does everybody understand this? And if you could zoom in back on the on me and the board, Mr. Producer. Have I lost anybody? Like, by all means, speak up if you need me to repeat something. Thank you, Mr. Producer. I appreciate that a lot. By the way, we can do Phantom next. We sure do. Yep, we sure do have a blue pen. We got a blue pen ready just for Phantom, you guys. Oh, by the way, Phantom's ratio is interesting. We have done Phantom before. We'll see if it changed. We'll see. Let's go look at Phantom. Good old Phantom. Phantom, 66 cents in the day. Not bad, not bad, sir. The 24-hour volume. Am I going to sneeze? Hang on. Okay. Phantom's 24-hour volume, 282 million, by the way. By the way, it's actually doing great in volume considering its market cap. 282, yeah. 280, we'll call it 283 million. How about that? By the way, that's not bad considering Avalanche was only maybe 50% higher than that, right? Do you guys remember? Yep. Oh, yeah, 666. So hardcore, bro. Anyways, we're going to now go to a good old Phantom scan. And, you know, it's possible Phantom scan was like a different... Yeah, like they don't have the fucking 24-hour tracker here. Let's see. Here's what we can do. We can go to coinfees.info maybe. No. Okay, let me see. Blockfees.info. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so it's showing me this, blah, blah, blah. What was that website? It was like, oh, maybe it was crypto fees. Hang on. Crypto fees.info. There we go. Okay, guys, we found it. We found it. Okay. Phantom, right here. Let's see what we're looking at here. We're looking at 1 day fees. Phantom's 1 day fees. By the way, it just shows 1 day fees. So 1 day gas. Do you guys see the number? Do you guys see it right there? Yes, Spooky Swap gets more fees than Phantom. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. You can also see that, by the way, Trader Joe makes $11,000 in fees. Yeah, you can see that right there. So Spooky Swap, for whatever reason, makes more fees than Trader Joe. It's still like, I don't even know if this is true anymore. Like, it might be, we might be wrong. No, it shows this. It says this. So, like, yeah, I have no idea. Like, it breaks it down for you here, right? So it shows you this. I think that this might be not showing the new versions of Trader Joe. Does that make sense? It might be showing, like, the old versions. So it might be like data here. But as far as Phantom goes, yep, it's showing this website, Phantom Foundation, source Phantom Scan. So then you see more details. Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, it says the price is 79 cents and the market cap is 2.2 billion. Is that correct? Because it's a little bit wrong. You guys see that? A little bit wrong here. Yeah. It's also showing like it's in the neighborhood of being right, but it might just be like, it might just have like multi-chain problems. Anyways, it might be like as much as like twice wrong, but according to crypto fees, because by the way, apparently you can't track fucking gas fees on Phantom Scan for 24 hours. If you assume it's correct, and obviously we notice that it might be wrong, this is $1,300, or sorry, we'll call it $1,400, right? Now, if we assume this is wrong as shit, and like we say, like, okay, let's assume it's double, let's assume it's 2,800, right? You're still looking at, like, for a fucking ratio, right? 2,800 divided by $283 million. Do you guys look at this? Let's inverse that. Because a swap fee and a gas fee are just, yeah, they're just different. Yeah, and like yeah, it's like the fact that they're kind of reducing a fucking DEX fee and like a swap fee and a DEX fee look at the same thing. This is when you reduce everything to the dollar, that's why you have all these inaccuracies in Web3. Like everything being reduced to the dollar, it's like you have to look at more things, which is why we're actually doing this. You know what I mean? Because like we know is if you think about this utilizer to speculator ratio, what it could really just imply is that gas is fucking expensive on Ethereum. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing is like, or does it mean that like, does that make sense? You have to. There's a lot of perceptions about this, but if you look at this figure, this is 1 to 100,000. That's literally what the utilizer to speculator ratio is on Phantom if we believe in cryptofees.info, which is perhaps fraught. We double this number to make it look. But by the way, if we did half the number, it would be 1 to 200 grand. Does that make sense? Either way, what does seem to be clear is that it's a 1 to a 6-figure number in utilizer to speculator ratio. It's probably true. In fact, if we go to Phantom Scan and we look at like 5-minute fees or whatever, like let's say we look at 60 minutes. So if we looked at 60-minute fees or whatever, right? And you wanted to look at like, you know, block whatever, 60-minute fees. I have no idea what you would say, but the fact of the matter is that actually, you know where you can see this? You can see this on phantom.foundation. This is where the actual data is correct. Let's see, ecosystem. Not this, but or if you go to like network, there you go, Phantom Explorer. It might be this one, Explorer.Phantom Network. Here we go. This one might be able to show it to us. Transactions, blocks, epochs, stapling assets. So if you see this, all blocks, all transactions, daily transactions, daily blocks, daily transaction fees. Okay, so literally it shows 2,100. Okay, let's see. So you can see here that it shows 2100, but I have no idea what this is. Is this here in Guai? Like 2100 Guai? Is that what we're looking at here? What are we measuring this in? Right? 2100? You can see it literally there. Daily transaction fees. But then what is the Y here? Are we assuming that's fucking Guai? Yeah, Guai. Well, what is 2100 Guai? Yeah, let's look at that in Phantom Scan. 9.64 Guai. 2100 Guai. That still seems like abysmally small. Like I don't know. Like it's this is an example again of the value of dashboards. Yeah, when data's not getting tracked like this, it gets ambiguous. Yeah, it is tiny. I don't know if it makes it sense that like, oh hey, it still feels like it's in the neighborhood of a few $1,000s though. Does that make sense? It still feels like hey, it's a few grand. Yeah, I don't know. Like my mental math here is very vague and ambiguous, but whether it's from the tracking, whether it's from Phantom Scan, whether it's whatever, it seems like it's this number. You guys see it? Right? But by the way, guys, you know, Ethereum is the most expensive, and then Avalanche is like, it's not that expensive, but it's definitely more expensive than Phantom. But you'll notice that like Phantom's 24-hour volume was still about 75% of Avalanche's. Does that make sense? And it's like, well, is the volume allowed to be higher because of the lower gas? Does that make sense? Or is the volume because of the gas, right? There's also a difference of where this token's getting traded. Does that make sense? Ethereum is traded all over the place. And Phantom, actually, I have no idea what that looks like. But anyways, this is about an hour and 7 minutes or so. And I'm really glad I got to go over utilizer to speculator ratio. I want you guys to know these ratios are part of what allows PYRESWAP to scale more than you realize. Does that make sense? Because if you think about the amount of people that are participating in the incantation of Witchfall, right? Like they are in fact the users of the utility. Does that make sense to you guys? It's from the token getting use that allows for speculation. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, we don't have to just create this hype bomb and then assume everybody's going to YOLO their mortgage in because they're addicted to gambling. Does that make sense? We literally just create a use case. We incentivize people to use the use case. And this is what allows people to buy the dip and actually believe that they're not fucking doing something bad. Am I clear? Do you guys make sense? This is another aspect of the design of PYRESWAP. It's called the utilizer to speculator ratio. Make sense? So like, there's more money to be made, or should I say, the money being made from utilizers allows for speculators to make money too. Does that make sense? Because if everybody's speculating on other speculators, your product's going to collapse. Did my volume just cut? Okay, back to me. Yeah. Sorry, I got a notey. But yeah, the utilizer to speculator ratio is what allows the GPSC to exist. Does that make sense? For those of you who have read the documentation of PYRESWAP, we have this concept of a player, a passer, and a pesterer, right? The three strategies. Well, it's from people utilizing the token for its use case that allows for speculation. Am I making sense to you guys? Right? Can you hear me now? Am I audible on Discord now? Okay, yeah. Does that make sense? If something doesn't have a use case, like there's no gain to have there, then you can't really speculate on it with any type of confidence. Making sense? Because if you're speculating on PyroPhantom now, it's because you understand its use case. Does that make sense? Right? Everybody who's speculating on something and they don't understand their use case, like they're taking crazy fucking risks and losing crazy fucking money. Make sense? Okay, well, I want to thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show. Does anybody have any questions? All right then, Mr. Producer, you can take us out. Have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow.